So today I want to talk, I thought this might be applicable for this time of year and this kind of market we're in, having to price houses and having buyers ask us what houses are worth or what we think they're worth is a unique time right now because you can't look back too far because the market has shifted significantly since the last time we were probably doing this class and when we were last marketing properties. Even 6 months ago, you could really just throw a dart at a board, pick a price, and you're going to get an offer, if not multiple offers. So things have shifted a little bit, and so we're going to kind of go through the actual. I love this little market we're in because we're having to actually learn stuff again, and it's fun. I feel valuable again. So we're going to learn how to determine value on a property, and this is what we're going to do. Okay, so we're going to understanding home value. So it's important to understand a value of a home is subjective. If I have 10 appraisers go out and appraise a home, I will have 10 different values. I will have 10 different square footages too, which is weird because a house is only as big as a house is, but a value is subjective. And so it's important to understand that when you are trying to value a home and when you're trying to talk to a seller about the value of their home. I know I was really intimidated with listings when I was brand new because I didn't want to tell someone a house is only worth this when it could sell for this, and it was really intimidating for me. And so the cool thing is there is no right answer. This is a subjective process. It's worth more to this person than it is to this person, but we're just looking at historical data and we're going to try to figure out, we're going to put a house in a ballpark, and then we're going to let the market dictate the price. So understand comping a house is an art. It is not a science. And so it is not exact. There's not proper ways to do it. You can do it a couple different ways and come to a similar value. But it is something that you can only get good at. Like any other art, you have to do it, practice it. The more houses you comp, the more houses any house you go, when you're brand new, any house you go show, it's probably good practice to go back and comp it, even if the clients don't like it. You've been in a house, you know what comps are like, comp it, figure out what you think the value is. Just get practice so that when you have a buyer who's ready to make an offer, you can be confident in what you're saying. Or when you have a seller ready to list, you can be confident in what you're saying. So the market will dictate the price. This is how I always explain it to all my sellers. The value of a home is subjective. Again, if I have 10 appraisers come in, I'll get 10 different values. My job is to look at historical data and predict what it will sell for. So I'm going to put it in a ballpark, and then the market will dictate the price. So anyone who comes in and says, I can sell it for this, or you can't get more than this, they're trying to sell you something. They're trying to get a listing, they're trying to get your business. I don't know what's going to happen. I've put houses out on the market that I thought should sell quickly and they sit for 2 months. And I've put houses on the market that I thought, who was going to buy this? And someone comes in from out of town and buys it in the second day. Thank you for doing a CE sheet too. I forgot last week, and is that what's being passed around? Thank you guys. You guys are really carrying the load on this. I really appreciate it. So very important to understand, it is a subjective process or a subjective valuation. Important to understand that. So the types of valuations we're going to run through, the number one we're going to spend the most time on is the comparable approach. Who remembers this stuff from their licensing? Who's new in license? Anyone remember this stuff? The comparable approach to valuation? Yeah. The income approach and the cost plus approach we're going to talk about. The main thing is going to be the comparable approach. If you're selling residential real estate, you're going to be dealing primarily with the comparable approach, but we'll talk about all of them. Okay, what is a comparable? This is very important. I think this is one of the things most agents in general don't get or don't understand, especially when they're new, but in general. A comparable has to be a comparable property. Geographic location is only part of that. A house can be right next door to another house and not be a comparable. And a house can be 2 miles away from a house and be a comparable, right? So what actually is a comparable? And this is based off of what appraisers are going to determine a comp is, right? So it has to be the same bed count. Very, very important. You try to use the same bed count, same bath count, give or take a half bath. So if I have a 1.5 bath, I can comp it with a 2, and a 1 with a 1.5, but not a 1 with a 2, right? If we can avoid it in best case scenario. Same square footage, give or take 15%. And that usually, a quick number I always do is about 250 feet. So if I have a 1,000 square foot house, I can go up to about 1,250 and I can go down to about 800. As I get bigger in the 4,000 feet, use the percentage. because 250 is not going to be enough. But if I have a 4,000 foot house, I'll go all the way down to 3 and up to 5, you know, something like that. But you want to stay, you know, you can't comp a 1,000 square foot house with a 2,500 square foot house. Or an 800 square foot house with an 1,800, right? So it has to be within approximately 15%. Otherwise, it's not a comparable property. Because you might see, I was just looking at a house with a client earlier today. Their house is 1,600 feet, and it has a big add-on. All the other houses in there are like 800, 900 feet. So I can't use the same price per square foot on my house as those others, because it will not be, they're not comparable properties. So square foot's a big one a lot of people ignore. Same garage count, you want to try to find as close to a house as yours as possible. So if you have a 2-car garage that's converted into living space, try to find comps with 2-car garages converted into living space. If you have a 1-car garage, try to find other 1 cars. If you have no cars, try to find other no cars. You can usually give or take a car. If you have a 2-car, you can comp it off of 1 if you have to, but try to find exact garage counts. When finding comps, you want to need at least 4 to 6 closed sales. If you don't have 4 to 6 closed sales, you don't have enough data to really be confident. If you're looking at comps and you just see 1 comp that's really good, you like, and that you think it supports, it's not going to be enough. You really need 4 to 6 closed sales to have an idea to really be able to predict the sales price on a home. And you need at least 1 comp from the exact neighborhood. Not so much after the 1950s or so, but earlier than that, if you deal in midtowns or older areas of suburbs, 1 street might be its own little development, right? It might have a different legal addition from street to street. So you really want to be within, and you kind of want to work within landmarks. So like main roads are going to be a cutoff between areas, highways, parks. You know, if there's anything cutting off your neighborhood from another neighborhood, like a main road, a creek, whatever it might be, try to stay within those, make that the neighborhood. So you really need 1 from inside the neighborhood, and then if you can't find good comps in the neighborhood, you can go outside the neighborhood, but they have to match, they have to be comparable properties. This is the number 1 thing. I see people comp houses with houses that aren't comps, and it skews their price up or down, and it's not accurate. So make sure you're actually using comps. And I can't remember where I mentioned this.
Brett?
Yeah.
In terms of age, what kind of range?
Yeah, good question. That should be on here. Thank you. I'm going to add that. So you really want to do about 10 years up and above and below. And the caveat to that is new construction. So if I have a new construction house, I can only comp it with new. If it's never been lived in, I can only comp it with never been lived in. I can't comp it with a house that was sold, even if it's 1 year old. If someone moves in and sells it in a year, I can't comp it with that. An appraiser will not do that, and you shouldn't do that. If a house is like 2 or 3 years old, I kind of go in increments of 5. Once it's older than 5 years, then you can do increments of 10. Does that make sense? So if it's 2 years old, you really need to stay within a 5-year period. And if it's older than 5, you can do it in 10s.
How do you go upward if it's only 2 years old or 1 year old?
Yeah, so if it's 1 year old, I go back 5 years to now. So if a house was built in, I don't like I have my year on my watch. If a house was built in 2001, I'll go like from 2017, 18 to 2001, right? New construction, but not brand new. The home's new, home's still under warranty most of the time, builder warranty, manufacturer warranties, but it's not new. New can only be new, never lived in. Yeah.
Is there like a certain radius, like a half a mile, or is this the same thing?
Yeah, so new construction, the way communities are now is they're pretty, but if you're developing on land or something, a radius I've heard is 3 miles from appraisers. You really want to stay within 3 miles. We'll get into this in the cost plus section a little bit, but if you're comping a really unique one, 1960s house, completely gutted on 5 acres with a barn, blah, 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 like really unique, right? Then you can go across the whole metro, right? That property might be North Midwest city, but if you find the exact same house, kind of like out in like West Yukon kind of thing, it's not really the same, but it's rural, so it's the same. So you really want to stay within 3 miles, but if it's super unique, you can go around the metro to find a similar property. We'll talk about that in the cost plus section a little bit more. I'm going to mention this again, but while I have this up, I want to make sure. Price per square foot is a realtor thing. It is not an appraiser thing. If you ever talk to appraisers about price per square foot, they're going to roll their eyes at you. It's not a thing. They don't price houses by price per square foot. Only realtors do that because we're lazy, or we found ways to be lazy. So you can only use price per square foot if it's a comp. If it does not match these, you cannot apply price per square foot because it's not a comp, right? So again, if I have an 800 square foot house and next door is a 1,800 square foot house, I cannot apply price per square foot because they're different, they're not comps, right? So I'll talk about that more in a minute, but it's important to understand price per square foot is a realtor thing. It is, so if you get a bad appraisal and you're trying to argue with the appraiser about price per foot, they're gonna laugh at you, they're gonna roll their eyes, it's not a thing. They do adjustments, which is a little bit different. Okay, I'm gonna run through the cost, the income and the cost plus, just so you have an idea. I really want you to know about it so you know when to apply it, and then when you have it, you can ask more questions. So income approach is gonna be primarily investment in cash flowing properties, mostly commercial, high occupancy, multifamily, stuff like that, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, that kind of stuff. The idea is that a homeowner will never own it. It's always gonna be owned by an investor. So its worth is valued in what it brings in income. Does that make sense? So that's how we're gonna determine. We're gonna basically find out what will the property rent for. Then I'm gonna determine what the cap rate of recent sales are, and then I'm gonna apply that cap rate to my estimated rent rate. So I'm gonna kind of go through that a little bit slower. So figure out, say my property will rent for $10,000 a month, big unit, whatever it might be, $10,000 a month. I'm gonna see what other, maybe it's a 16 unit complex. I'm gonna see what other 12 to 30 unit complexes are around there and what they've traded, what they've sold at cap rates. So they might have been selling between 8 and 10% cap rate. So I'm gonna take that 8 to 10% cap rate and apply it to what my estimated rent is. So I'm gonna divide 8%, $10,000 divided by 8%, it'd be $10,000 a month times 12. So it's gonna give me a $1.5 million valuation. That's assuming I can rent it for $10,000 a month and other properties around me are selling at an 8 to 9% cap rate. Does that make sense? So when you're looking for comparables, it has to be a similar style of property, but I'm seeing what other properties around me have sold for as a return. Not price, but a return. And then I'll take that return and apply it to my estimated rents. Does that make sense? Questions on that? Basically what you need to know is this is gonna be on investment type properties. Properties that people are not gonna own. They're only gonna own it for the return that it might give them. It's an investment. So they're gonna do income approach. Cost plus approach. So you wanna find comps. So this is like, again, I was just talking about that. Maybe I got a property on some land. It's a unique structure, it's unique land, or it has a unique use, whatever it might be. I'm gonna try to add up all the value on that land and combine it together. So cost plus means what's the cost of the land plus improvements. That's what that title stands for. Cost of land plus improvements. So I'm gonna figure out, okay, this house sits on 5 acres. What does 5 acres sell for in this area?
Okay, it sells for $200,000. Then I'm gonna find, okay, it's 1970s house, remodeled. What does that sell for in a neighborhood? Okay, that sells for that, and it sells for $150,000 or so in a neighborhood. Then I'm gonna combine them, so it's a $350,000 house. So I got $150,000 house on it with a $200,000 piece of land. Does that make sense? So it's gonna be a cost plus improvements. What's the cost of land plus whatever I built on it? And
you really wanna do this only if there's no comparables. If there's no similar properties with similar size house, similar size land, that kind of thing. You want to try to stay away from this because you're really just guessing. This is a educated guess in the truest sense. So, but if there's no comps, you have to find a value. You have to back into a value somehow. And so when you look at these different, especially with commercial properties more, or some investment properties, when someone asks what my property's worth, you want to try to find the highest and best use for the property. What's the property going to be most valuable at? So if you have like a house with a garage apartment, is it more valuable to sell it as an income producing property, or is the neighborhood really appreciated where it's more valuable to a homeowner? Because a homeowner might come in and buy it for 200 grand, but a landlord, an investor might only buy it for 170. So you can use these different approaches to figure out what your highest and best use for a piece of land is. If it's in the city, 9.9 times out of 10, your comparable approach is going to be better. Unless it's in a really bad area and cash flows really well for some reason, then income, you might make more money selling that at the income approach. Anything else on these two? Makes sense? Yeah.
So the cost plus approach, Brett, is more for like unique structures, because I remember looking at a house, and the house itself was very outdated, very old, but the land itself was very attractive, right? Mm-hmm. So we would have been interested in the land, but we weren't interested in the house.
Yeah, so in an instance where maybe you have like a dilapidated structure on a property, the structure is a liability. It's going to cost me money to pull that off that land. So really, I'm just competent with the land. So that wouldn't really be a cost plus. That's just comps. I'm looking for land comps. So and a cost plus is, yes, unique, but really just I can't find anything like it. Doesn't have to be unique. Could be again, 1960s ranch style house on 5 acres. Not terribly unique, but there's just not a lot of comparable sales in the last 6 months or 12 months. So I need to back into it and kind of merge two values together. So it's not necessarily like how unique it is, just the availability of other comparable properties. Because that's the thing is, someone could build a house for $800,000, but if there's been no sales to support that value, an appraiser can't justify that value. I know it costs $800 because you spent that to build it, but there's no other comparables like it. And so if you ever heard of an investor outbuilding the neighborhood, it means they put too nice of finishes in it. There's no comparables to support. I know the house is worth that, right? But there's no comparables to support it. So no bank's going to no bank is going to give you a loan, and no appraiser is going to give you value. All right, the comparable approach. So the concept is find comparable properties, make adjustments based on the differences. So the way an appraiser is going to look at this is they're going to assign values to these adjustments. So if there's a half bath difference, the subject property, which is going to be like your property you're valuing, that's what appraisers call your property, is the subject property, and then comparable properties. So maybe the subject property is 2 bath, but the comparable is only 1.5. They're going to make an adjustment and give you a little bit of value on top of that house because you have an extra half bath. And each appraiser values a half bath different. Each appraiser values an extra garage different. They value, this is why it's so subjective and so frustrating. If you've got vinyl windows versus aluminum or wood window, every appraiser is going to give different adjustments for that kind of stuff. So it's very difficult to predict, which is probably why realtors try to, reduce it down to a price per foot. So an appraiser is going to make adjustments based on the variations from your subject property to the comparable property. So understanding price per foot, appraisers don't use it, we just use it. It's not set in stone, it's a rule of thumb for realtors to get us into a ballpark, right? Because all we're trying to do is get into a ballpark and let the market dictate the price. So, good question. Let's say I have a house where the garage has been converted into a living space. And it's very obvious. You have to take 3 big steps down into it, and it's different flooring. It has, they punched a hole in the wall to put an air duct into it. It's obvious. It's livable square footage, but it's not as valuable as another house where its original square footage was built, right? You can just tell the difference. So there's a couple ways to do this. The most common way is what you said, is apply a percentage of the price per foot to it. So if it's really good, because there's some add-ons where you can't see the threshold, you don't even know you're walking into an add-on kind of thing, just look like you're walking into another room. In that case, if the square footage matches and your comparables all match up, I apply similar square footage. The number one thing appraisers look for is, does it have the same heating and cooling system? So if it has no heating and cooling, or it's on a different heating and cooling system, like it's a window unit and the rest of the house is central heat and air, they're not going to apply the same value to it. A lot of them may not even consider it livable square footage. So it depends on the appraiser. But yeah, let me finish this thought and I'll get it. So normally if I have an add-on, I'll probably, if it's a normal add-on where you can tell, I'll apply about 50% value to it. So if the rest of the house is worth $100 a foot, that 200 square foot add-on is worth $50 a foot. Does that make sense? It's not as valuable as the rest of the house. If it's really good, maybe I'll apply 75% value. If it's really good and you can't tell and they tied it into the roof and everything looks great, maybe you apply 100% value. But most times if it's an add-on garage conversion or a patio conversion, it's not going to be seamless. And so you're going to apply 50 or 75% value to that square footage. And then you'll add. So the main house is 100 a foot, and that equals $100,000. The add-on is $20,000, so it's a $120,000 house. Does that make sense? Yeah, you have a question?
Since we're starting to get to see more like new construction, like semi-enclosed HVAC rooms, like an attic or whatnot, like two-story homes, at what point is there a point where improvements become a livable space? Is it, if they don't put a ceiling, as long as it's open, it's not livable?
Yeah.
Close it off, it becomes livable?
So I think you're talking about like builders framing out a space, but not actually, yeah, okay. So yeah, livable has to be finished out comparable to the rest of the house. That's kind of how an appraiser. So if you walk out into your attic and it's got wood decking, that's not, the rest of the house has carpet and tile. and this has wood decking. It's not the same.
But still, but it has 4 walls that are all enclosed.
Is it painted?
But
If it's not,
painted, everything is just
if there's no heat and air, yeah, I'd say there'd have to be heat and air, electric run to it. I mean, it's got to comply with other code, right? So residential code says you have to have an outlet every 6 feet in the house. So if there's no outlets up there, it doesn't comply, it's not livable, yeah. So if there's no window, you can't use, there's things like that, there's no egress. So stuff like that an appraiser's gonna look at. But in general, if you're just selling a house and it's sheetrocked, painted, it's got electrical plugs, lights, carpet, even though it could be poor, it couldn't be not as good as the rest of the house, but they're gonna consider it livable square footage. It just might not be as valuable as the rest of the home footage, yeah.
What about like a pool house, like attached to the house but not accessible from the house?
Great question. So yeah, let's talk about other structures. So detached garage, detached pool house, pool itself. If it's detached footage, it cannot be included in the square foot of the house. You can get value for it, but it cannot be included in the square footage. I see a lot of people make that mistake. They might be like a 500 square foot apartment above the garage. It's not included you can't include it in the square foot of the house. You can say there's a 500 square foot apartment above the garage and apply value to it, raise the price of the house or the property, but the square footage cannot increase in the house. So with extra structures, pool, if you build a detached garage, if you build a pool house, normally what I do is you're never gonna get, unless it produces income or something, like if you build an apartment, you can rent it out, there's value in that. But if you're just building it for your own personal use, you're very rarely, or a shop, you build like a big 20 by 30 shop and you're on land or something, you're very, very rarely gonna get the value out of it that you spent. You might spend 80 grand on a pool, the next homeowner is not gonna pay you 80 grand for that pool. So typically with extra structures like that, shops, garages, pools, that kind of stuff, I usually apply about 50% value. Whatever it costs you to build, that's about what you're gonna get back. And I tell my clients that when they're considering building those things. If they're looking for a house and they wanna build a shop on it, I tell them that you can build a shop, make sure you're gonna love it and use it and get your money out of it, because when you go to sell it, you're probably only gonna get about 50% value out of it. That's just how things work, because I can go buy another house that already has it versus buying and building it, yeah.
What about like a honeymoon suite or like a guest house? 50%?
Yeah, if it's detached, you're probably only gonna get about 50% of the structure cost.
And detached, you mean you cannot access it?
From the property, yep. Even if it's a same structure, but you have to go outside to access it, can't include it in the livable square footage. An appraiser will not include it in the livable square footage. Yeah, good clarification too. Yeah, so that's where, again, if I have, okay, let me go back a little bit. On those detached structures, the best thing you can do is find comps that have those. If you have a house with a pool, find a house with a pool. Then you don't have to add anything to it. If you have a house with a shop, find houses with shops. If you have houses with pool houses, find houses with pool houses. Then there's no adjustments because those comps already have those things. Make sense? But if you can't find comps for the pool, then apply half value to it. You're making an adjustment, right, that we talked about. You're making an adjustment like an appraiser would make. So if your house has a shop and a pool and a detached garage and you find a comp that has all those things, you're not gonna make any adjustments because that house has those things and it's sold. So that's a comparable. Does that make sense? So you're only making adjustments if the house that you're comparing it to doesn't have those things. Yeah.
Do warranties add value if it's like a new construction? Do those add value?
So things don't add value. So this is so we get this a lot. I literally just walked through a client of mine who's an investor, has a couple properties they're thinking about listing. This morning I was walking through a couple properties and he was saying, what should I do to get them ready for the market? And it's a tricky process and there's no right answer. What you want to do is make it comparable to the market. That's the thing. Don't make it nice. Don't make it like what you would want. Don't overdo it. What does the market say to do? Do those things. So if you're selling a house in a newer neighborhood and they all have warranties, then it's not going to add value to have a warranty because all the other comps have warranties. You're losing value not having it. So if they say, should I replace the roof? Every other house has a roof. You're not gonna get that money out of it if you put a good roof on it. Buyers expect there to be a roof on a house. Yeah, all you're doing is you're bringing your condition up to the market. So that's where it's like, I got a broken window. If I fix it, can I raise the price? No. Every other house has windows that work. So you're just bringing your house up to the market. That kind of stuff. Now, if it's like, I got aluminum windows and I want to replace them all with vinyl windows, does that add value? Well, are there other houses in the neighborhood that have vinyl windows? Those are your comps. If you think you can get more with that, then yes. Replacing my driveway with new concrete, right? Stuff like that. Well, it's like, no, you're probably not gonna get more value. It's gonna make it more marketable, but not more valuable. So that's a tricky situation. You really wanna look at the comps in the neighborhood. I have investors ask me all the time, do you think I should put granite in this? Do you think I should do tile, carpet, blah, blah, blah? And the answer is, what does the market tell us? What will the market bear? If we put real wood floors through this house and every other house has carpet, we're overbuilding the neighborhood, right? So you kind of think, what will the market bear to determine what kind of updates you should make? Because again, what I think a house is worth, what you think it's worth, what the homeowner thinks it's worth, means nothing. It's only worth what someone is willing to pay for it, right? And people will only pay what other people have paid for similar properties. That's what you have to remember. What I bought it for, what I spent on it has nothing to do with what it's worth. All right, comp in a house. So with tools, we're gonna need access to the MLS and the county assessor. I'm gonna jump into it here in a minute. Don't forget to tell me to, I saw you point at me, thank you. Remind me again, I'll forget. So the steps, real simple. Very simple process, don't overthink this. We're gonna find the legal edition, we're gonna set up geographic boundaries. Then we're gonna input our comparable specs, same bed count, same bath count, 250 square feet, bigger, smaller. And then we're gonna sort the results by, we're gonna look for actives, pendings, and solds. We're gonna sort the results by closed price per square foot. So if it's not closed, it's pending or active, it's not really a comp. We can use those to gauge what the market is doing, but it's not really a comp because they haven't closed yet. You don't know what the value is gonna be when it actually closes. So we're gonna sort by closed price per square foot. It's gonna put the highest square foot at the top and the lowest square foot at the bottom. So theoretically, it's the nicest house at the top and the least nice house at the bottom. Does that make sense? Because I'm doing price per square foot. So then I'm gonna start at the top and work my way down. And I'm gonna figure out where does my property fit in that list of comps. Does that make sense? So if I start at 150 a foot and it goes down to 100 a foot, and I say, okay, this one's nicer than mine, this one's nicer than mine, this one's nicer than mine. Oh, I'm nicer than this one, I'm nicer than this one. So I know kind of where I fit in line, and right here is $110 a foot. So that's the comp of my house. Does that kind of make sense? I'll show you, it'll make more sense as I walk through it. Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna run, does anyone have a house that they would like comped? Yeah. You got one?
I got one really good one I need to
Okay. Like a good one, like it'll be easy and fun, or it's gonna be like make me sweat?
Like I have an appointment with her later this afternoon.
Is it in a neighborhood?
Is it my, do my job for
Is it in Oklahoma County?
yeah.
Okay, so Oklahoma County Assessor Office, Oklahoma County Assessor website is really good. Any other county is really bad. And so if you're outside of Oklahoma County, I'd recommend just doing Realist. Yeah, on the MLS, thank you. Realist sometimes pulls data from the MLS and it kind of commingles it a little bit. In the county, I like to see the different data and compare it. Because sometimes the county might say a certain square footage and the MLS might say something different. So you just want to kind of compare it all and make sure you're asking the right questions. Okay, what is address?
3432 Northwest, 160th Street. I believe that's it.
All right, so this is the county assessor. Shows you the owner, shows you what they paid for it, shows you when they bought it, shows you what the taxable market value is, which is never really that accurate. It even gives you some comps as well, but again, not really accurate. It's better to do it. But really what I'm looking for is the square foot. I come down here, I'm looking for year built and square foot. So now that I know it's built in 2018, it's 1,500 square feet and 1 story, I can also click on, click here, and it'll show me the building. So I see it's 1-story building, 1,500 square feet, built in 18. It's on a slab, 3 bedrooms, 2 full baths, central heat and air. It just kind of gives me some basic specs about the house that was submitted by the builder when it was built. The older the house is, the less accurate it might be. Then obviously you can see the exterior of the house. So I know it is an 18 built, 1,500 square foot house. So let's go into the MLS. Oh, and I need the legal edition, which I can find right here, if you didn't know what it was. So you can come into Ironstone. So I'm gonna copy them. It's Ironstone Phase 2. So remember this, if you see kind of how, see how it says Ironstone PH and it spells out the letter 2? On the county, Ironstone Phase 2 might have 80 houses in it. and half of them say ironstone pH TWO. Some of them say ironstone ADD2 with a number 2. Some of them say ironstone phased number 2. So they're all different. So when you're looking for additions, copy and paste the main word. So we're going to copy that. So we're going to go in the MLS. We're going to go to residential. We're going to go search residential quick. And this is where we're going to input all the criteria for our spec homes, or all the spec criteria for the homes we're going to be looking for. So we're going to do actives, pendings, and solds. The only thing we can really look at for comps is solds, but I want actives and pendings to see what the market's trending towards, right? Typically, 6 months ago, I would say you want to go out 180 days. You want to go out 6 months into the past to look for comps. You can't really do that now. So now we're going to go back 90 days and see if we can find the comps. If we can't, we'll go back further, but we're going to adjust based on the market. So we're going to go actives, pending, solds in the last 90 days. Legal edition. We're going to paste. It's going to say ironstone. So remember, it might have anything else after it. So we're going to do ironstone asterisk. So you put the star behind it, and that's going to look for the word ironstone and then anything else. Ironstone phase 1, phase 2, pH, TWO, ADD1, anything. It's going to look for anything after ironstone. So anytime you input a criteria, you can look down here at the bottom and it shows you how many matches are matching the criteria you plugged in. So actives, pending, solds in 90 days. In ironstone, there's been 16 matches so far. So remember, we really need 4 to 6 to give us a real good idea. So I'm going to keep dwindling it down. So it's 1,500 square feet. So I'm going to go to, like, we'll call it 1,800. We'll call it 1,200 to 1,800 square feet. Come on. And I'm going to look for 3 beds. Okay, so they're all basically that. So actives, pending, solds, 90 days, ironstone, 1,200 to 1,800 square feet, 3 beds, 15 matches. So now I'm going to go to results and see what I've got. All right, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pending. So there's 8 solds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we got 8 solds, 6 pendings, and 1 active that I can look for these comps in. So again, most people, if you haven't manipulated your MLS yet, you will see, this is what it'll go to agent single line, and this is all you'll see. So what I encourage people to do, I look at list price per square foot and closed price per square foot every time I'm on the MLS. So if you click, you hover over the column where there's 4 arrows. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's got 4 arrows, like I'm gonna move something. Don't do it where you've got the hand, because that'll just sort it. Move it where there's 4 arrows, and it's going to give you a drop down. You want to insert column, and then I want LPSF, list price per square foot, and CPSF, close price per square foot. And you can add them, and you can see it'll add it to the, so it adds it right here. And then when you do that, go up to this little manage display, this pencil and paper, and you can hit save as copy, and you can call it whatever you want. So I called mine years ago, I called it open house, because this is what I printed when I went to an open house. So I have close price per square foot, year built, list price per square foot, days on market I added to, because I like to see that when I'm comping houses, and close price. So I've got the comps, I got the specs set up, right? So I found the legal edition. Got the specs set up. I'm going to sort by price per square foot. So it's highest price per square foot at the top, lowest at the bottom. You can see the ones that don't have any, that means they're pending or solds. So we're going to use those, but we're really looking for closeds. And then we're going to start with the highest comp, go down the list until you find where your home fits. So this is where I always tell my clients this too. If someone gives you a value of a home before they've stepped foot in the home, they haven't looked at the home, they're guessing, right? So I always tell my clients, I come with a ballpark, but I say I don't really know until I see inside the home, because your home might be a lot better, might be a lot worse, whatever. But now that I've seen it, I'm gonna go back, do some homework, and I'll give you my opinion on evaluation. But to walk into a house and be like, oh, it's gonna sell for this, is, I think, a little bit arrogant. I don't think you're just trying to sound like you know what you're talking about. When in reality, you have no idea what these other houses look like. So if you've been in the home, have you been in the home? Okay, so you're gonna tell me you're gonna tell me where to place it. tricky thing was like, oh wait, you guys forgot something. You guys today. So we're gonna do 2020 and older. Because I'll bet there's, okay, so it pulled one out. So there was one house built in 2020, 2021, and 2022. I'm gonna pull those out because ours is 18. So I'm really looking from like 15 to 19 is kind of what I'm looking for in this range. I could probably, in new construction, I probably don't need to because they probably all have 2. So if I put 2 in here, they all have 2. So yes, I should have for this example. I'm kind of, same with the year built, most of them are gonna be all in this. So these new construction neighborhoods, you know, people call them cookie cutter. They have different elevations, different floor plans, but they're all between 12 and 1,500, you know, this neighborhood is all between 12 and 1,500 square foot, 3 bed, 2 bath.
It's all Tabor home grade.
They're Tabor, okay, yeah, so they're all very comparable homes.
Can you blow that up, like Control Plus on that? Thank you.
Is that okay? Can you still see that? Okay, I'll go in higher. So, yeah, so again, got the specs, active bidding sold 90 days, ironstone community, 12 to 1,800 square feet. I went up about 200 feet and down about 200 feet, 250, up and down 250. 3 beds, 2 baths, 2021 or older. 2021 minus means 2021 or older. If I wanted to do 2021 or newer, I do that, and there's only one, right? So that means older than 2021. And then I go to my results. I got my properties here. So this is in the property view. So I'll go to this display is how you control what you're looking at. So I go to my open house. I'm gonna go over here to price per square foot, filter it for the top, and then we're just gonna click on it, click on the nicest one. This is the nicest one for whatever reason. We're gonna start going through it. So these new constructions too, there shouldn't be a ton of variation. So 210 all the way to 175. That's quite a bit of variation for a new construction neighborhood. So these lower ones might be backing up to some power lines, or there might be weird things like that. There could be an oil wellhead across the street in some of these new construction neighborhoods. So we're just going to go through here and we're going to see if it's nicer or better than ours. And really what we're looking at is kitchen. I'm looking at kitchen, flooring, and bathrooms. That's about it. Everything else is paint and windows. So carpet versus hardwood, tile versus blah, blah, blah. Granite, open floor plan versus not. Just kind of kitchen, flooring, and bathrooms are my rule of thumb. So tell me, and we don't have to look at all the pictures. If you know this is nicer, we'll just go on. Okay, ours is not as nice. So
It has an expired listing on it, by the way.
oh, so I can see it? What's the address? Okay, so this is our subject property. Pictures are good. Picture rotation's not good. So it's got ceramic faux wood tile, odd paint color, builder carpets. Tankless water heater, but I'll bet they all have that in that neighborhood. Yeah, no value there. Okay, so it's got some odd stuff. A coat of paint will go a long way in this house, a long way. And what I'd recommend is make it match exactly what the new construction houses are doing. Go find a house that the painter's in and ask them what paint color it is. Okay. So now we've seen it, we're gonna go through. This one's nicer. Here's the next one. Another perfect example. This thing costs 6, 7, 8 grand. You may get some value, 2, 3 grand you wanna add on top of it, but not a ton. They poured extra patio, same thing. 6 grand for the patio or something. You're not gonna get all that value out of it. So this has engineered wood floors instead of our ceramic tile. It's got open floor plan. Our kitchen wasn't open. It was a galley kitchen in the back of the house. Around the back, yeah. So this is the same floor plan as that first house. Oh, never mind. So again, I'd say nicer. Just a better color scheme. It's staged a lot better. Is it vacant right now still? Okay. So we're gonna keep going. And when you get really good at being a realtor, you can go like this and you can just see everything. You don't have to look at it because it's all the same. It's all the same, guys. Again, much better floor plan, much better finishes. It's got the engineered floor. Yeah, much better. Keep on going. So this has got the faux wood ceramic like us, similar flooring, much better color scheme. That better floor plan, that open kitchen of ours. I didn't look at our bathrooms. Is there a picture of the bathroom? No. Okay, but they all look like that. Nicer bathroom, yeah. All right. So this has the tile floors too. Again, better floor plan, better color scheme. Oh, this one's pending, okay. I think we do, I want to find one with a kitchen like ours. That's what I want to find. Same floor plan. Who built this one? Ideal or?
Those are all Tabor's.
Yeah, I can tell these are. Oh, home creation, okay. Yeah, you can tell the Tabor has a, I think Tabor has pretty good floor plans. So here's a similar color scheme. It's got the engineered wood. Yeah, you can just tell. That's another thing is you might look at home creations. You can see the home creation houses are all, these top 6 houses are all Tabor. They put more finishes in. They put a storm shelter in everything. They fence everything. They usually do, they do more stuff.
So I have a question on the area.
Uh-huh.
So if you go back to criteria, or to the map, usually what I'll do is I'll just draw kind of a square around that area and then take out the legal description. Is that still okay to do, or does it have to have the legal description?
No, it doesn't have to. So like these new builds are real easy because they're sectioned. I mean, you can see the neighborhood stops right there, right? I mean, this is the neighborhood. If you go into I mean, even into, you know, Old Edmond, like this is probably 10 different neighborhoods, right? But it's all the same section. It's all 10 different neighborhoods. So you might only be able to comp this little section and not with this. So this new house is easy because I can plug it in and it draws a perfect square for me. But like if I plug it in, you know, like in an older neighborhood, I might plug it in and that neighborhood might only be 2 streets here, that addition. So then I say, okay, 2 streets isn't enough. So I'm gonna draw a square around this section because I know these are all similar houses. So you can draw squares, but if it's a newer home, again, built after the 70s or so, that's when they really started sectioning communities off kind of with fences and, you know, all kinds of stuff. So 80s, 70s, you can really just plug in a neighborhood community and it'll give you a good square. The Village is a good example too. You know, this is all called, you know, if I typed in Cassidy, it's gonna pull this, it's gonna pull like some of this, some of that, and a little bit of that. So it's gonna pull a couple different developments. So I would actually draw a square because I want it to be inside these main roads, right? Main roads create geographical boundaries, like a main roads or highways, stuff like that. So you really wouldn't want to comp this with this if you can avoid it, and this with that if you can avoid it, and stuff like that. Does that make sense? You can create geographical boundaries if it's a weird, odd community. But again, newer homes, they do that for you. They create the boundaries for you. Okay, we're gonna keep going through here. Man, I think if we paint it, I think we're kind of in our range. Here's another Tabor house. You can just, I'd say this is a pretty close one, if we paint it. Cut our cabinets. Dog. That's weird. So this has carpet in the living. See, you know, we can kind of come down on comps a little bit. It's got carpet. So I'd probably put it around these two I checked. So I'd put it around 180 to 183 a foot. So what was it at? It was at 207 a foot? Okay, that's a tough conversation. So
Not when you do this business, it's like an easy conversation.
283 is what I'd probably do. So we're about 40 grand off. You think they're gonna be, no? Then, so we talked about this. There's only two things you can do to a house to get it to sell. Decrease the price or increase the condition. That's it. There's nothing else. There's no secret way to market it. There's no secret sauce to do anything, blah, blah, blah. Decrease the price or increase the condition. The house will sell when the market thinks the price meets condition. The market will dictate the price. Get that tattooed on yourself somewhere. It's a great way to blame the market, not you, for something happening. So if it's not selling, and that's why I tell sellers, we'll list it at whatever you want. Here's what I think it's probably gonna go at. I think it's gonna go around the 285 range, maybe 290 because there's only one house available, right? So scarcity creates more demand, so there's less available in there. Someone likes this neighborhood. So I think we're gonna be around the 280, 290 range. You wanna list it at 321, we'll do it, but here's what I think. But if we wanna try to get that, we really wanna get it, I think we need to paint the whole thing. I mean, let's see what else we can do with it. Do what? Yeah, I mean, this up front's kind of weird. Does it look weird when you see it in person? Yeah, I mean, just, it's extra. Pull it out, put mulch down. This is all fine. That brown orange has to go. That entryway is just, it's just an odd floor plan. Yeah, and they've got brown curtains too, so it's like they're really trying to kill sunlight. And they're doing it. So I think you pull all the window treatments off. I think you paint it that builder gray and white, and it'll look like a whole new house at that point. Okay. Yeah, so and also the marketing of it was not done great. I mean, it's just like, I have to go 10 pictures before I see the kitchen. People buy off curb appeal, kitchen, and bathrooms. So why do I go 10? I have to go 13 pictures before I see that. So there's things you can do to make it better. But yeah, I think you paint the whole thing. You pull all the stuff out of it, pull the curtains off, all the window treatments, and paint everything back to its original color. And you'll give yourself a shot. I don't think you have a shot at 320, but it'll give yourself a shot. So I came up with like 285. Does everyone, did we see how we got there, the process of it though? So not overly complicated, and you'll see weird stuff like, you know, it's an imperfect market, right? So I thought this house was kind of nicer than these houses, but it was lower per foot. So you'll see things that are kind of odd. You'll have to look around. Where is it in the neighborhood? Is it on a big corner lot or a small lot? Is it an awkward pie shape, no backyard, stuff like that? So do a little research. So if something doesn't make sense, you know, because I thought one of these was nicer.
How do you add value for like the premium, quote unquote, premium lot or corner lot or lots that are larger than most of the other ones in the neighborhood?
No, I mean, you guess what's someone willing to pay. I listed a couple houses on a main road, on Britton Road, and there's not any comps on Britton Road, so I just had to guess. What do I think a buyer is gonna discount this house because it's on Britton? And I went down like $5 a foot. So it's just like, you're just kind of guessing. Again, I'm putting it in the ballpark, and then the market will dictate the price. Good job. So I can't tell you. This is what I think. Now, if there was comps along Britton, I could have told you what I thought. But new houses, they're all similar enough. this is what we call an efficient market. There's a lot of transactions to pull from, you know. I can pretty close guess to what this is gonna sell for, and it's not 321. So I'm willing to guess that it's gonna sell under 290, if I had to guess. The one saving grace for overpriced houses is out-of-town buyers. So if you ever have a house that's overpriced and it sells, 90% chance it's out-of-town buyer. So that's the unfortunate. And you can also, the good thing is about being the second realtor, you know, they had it out there, okay, they only had it out there 40 days, but it's like, you already tried that, right? I mean, the marketing was not great, but you tried it. Someone who was interested would have come. You know, I'd be curious how many showings they got, what kind of feedback they got, but you already tried 321. It didn't work. And my job as a realtor is not to market better or faster or harder. It's to set your expectations and get the house sold.
Set the expectation, try
Yeah.
to be closer to the same.
Yeah.
And don't get outside the box.
I'm supposed to guide you, right? I'm gonna tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And what you need to hear is that it's probably gonna sell closer to 290. Or let's make this house worth 320. Yeah, okay, so they want to be the second nicest house in the neighborhood. It's just not gonna happen. So that's the idea. I filtered it, worked my way down until I found where I thought it fit in, come over here and apply that closed price per square foot to the square footage. And that's where I think the value is. Now again, we could list it at 321, someone might come in and offer 300. Could happen. During the crazy market, that's what was happening. I was telling my clients, here's what I think. They wanted to tack 10 grand onto it, got multiple offers, drove it up another 10 grand. 20 grand over what I recommended. Doesn't happen, not happening anymore. So now it's time to come back down to earth and have these conversations. So it's just and it's an easier conversation to have now because someone already tried and it didn't work. And it was someone they probably trusted because they picked them, right? So it's like someone who you know is not an idiot tried this and didn't work. So I'm telling you what you need to hear now, not what you want to hear. In a better way. Don't call anyone an idiot. Any questions on the process? All makes sense? The best thing you can do is just comp your house, comp your neighbors, comp your friends. You know, it's hard, you want to go in the house to see what they look like. Comp houses that are on the market. If you go show a house to a buyer, comp it. The more you do this, like I said, I remember being so intimidated with this process because I'm the one with the license. I'm the professional. People are asking me what I think of the price. And I was intimidated because I didn't know what to tell them. It's not a horribly complicated process. Some properties are more complicated than others, but if it's in a community, if it's in a neighborhood, it's normally gonna be there's normally enough sales in Oklahoma City.
Like new construction that's towards the beginning of the process that maybe months out, do appraisers, because they look at more when the contract was written versus when it actually closed. Because I get appraisers that'll call me sometimes and they're asking like, well, when did this house go under contract? So we're trying to comp it.
Oh, so what I've heard is that appraisers can use comps up until the date of the appraisal. But it sounds like you're saying they said the date of the contract.
Yeah, because it's one of those homes that's been under contract for probably about 10 months, 10 to 12 months.
So I've heard, because I've seen like pending houses. I've had an appraisal issue before and I said, hey, I called this realtor and they told me it's selling at $195 a foot. Can you wait a week to turn in your appraisal and use that comp? And they're like, no, it has to be closed at the time of the appraisal. And so even if 2 or 3 great comps close between your appraisal and when you close, can't use them. Because at the time of the appraisal, they were not comps, they were pendings. So I've been told, and I don't know if anyone's talked to appraiser or heard different, but I've been told the date of the appraisal is, it has to be closed on or before that date. Otherwise, because they can't use pendings, because they don't know what they're closed at. Another thing you can look for in here, I didn't look at. So another thing that you can look at now, again, this is something we used to have to do and now you can start having to do it again, is you want to look at seller concessions. So none of these had concessions. They all had, oh yeah, there it is. Seller concession amounts, seller concessions. So in above the 300 range, you're gonna see less concessions. They're still there, but less of them. If you're in the 100 to 300, 250 range, you're gonna see more concessions. So if I saw 6 or 7 of these houses I'll have $2,000 to $5,000 in seller concessions. I'm gonna tell my seller that, hey, most of these comps have had to give money to the buyer at closing, concessions, so expect that, because the buyer can see this. If the buyer's agent and the buyer knows the market, they're gonna ask for it. So it's just like the price. Price comps are here, concession comps are here, you combine them to get a net offer, right? So you wanna look at these now too, when you're working with a buyer and when you're working with a seller, so they know what to expect. You want them to, again, set expectations up front, not later on. So you can look at these by going to the property and scrolling down to each one. But I wanted to do it quicker, so I added the field. Any field on this sheet can be added to this report, which is cool, and you can view it. You can put occupied on here, pool, which direction does the property face, anything at all you can put on here and sort through it. It's kind of cool. All right, we're running out of time. Any other final comp questions, value questions?
So I've got one, so I was just recently looking at appraisal, so we're under contract at 219.
Okay.
And the appraisal said home appraised at 220. Is that like, for that report, that's like the most that home appraised for, or that's kind of, I'm still learning kind of how to read those, to be honest.
Yeah, so under contract 219, appraised for 220.
Yeah.
So what you'll find, 99% of the time, your appraisal will come in right at the contract value.
Okay.
The appraiser's job is to protect the bank, to make sure they're trying to justify the cost to the bank. So they don't really care. Again, a house is worth nothing until it sells. It's on paper, it's not real money. And sometimes sellers think it's real money and they treat it like, and it is when it sells, but like our client is counting that 320. She's counting that money, but it's not real because it hadn't sold and it won't sell at that. So it's not real until it sells. So giving a value of a house at 220 or 230 or whatever, all the bank cares about is it worth what my client is buying it for. So most appraisers are just gonna be able to justify that price and then appraise it at that price, most of the time.
And that's why I thought, I was wondering, because you always see that, it's always real close.
It's always right at it, yeah.
So, yeah.
And I had one appraiser tell me I consider this a good appraiser, because some appraisers think they're, the end all be all and what I say goes, and a lot of them. But one appraiser said, by the time I get involved, 2 members of the public, 2 professionals have all agreed on a price, and my job is just to come in and make sure it makes sense. And that made a lot of sense to me. But some appraisers come in and try to ding stuff like, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. And if you put concessions on there, a lot of appraisers will just take that right off the top. Because the bank, you're essentially getting the bank to pay that by putting it into the mortgage, right? So a lot of them will just take it right off. If you go over list price, they'll just knock you back down. It's just like, if you go over list price and ask for stuff, they knock it down. So don't put refrigerators and stuff like that in the contract because the bank hates seeing that stuff. Appraisers see it and they'll knock the price. So some of them are a little more hard-headed than others, but most of them should just try to justify a price. Again, 2 members of the public have agreed, 2 professionals have agreed. You're just here to make sure it's not egregious, right? But yeah, 99% of the time, they're gonna come in right at your contract price.
Is that kind of how you would explain it to like if you're on a listing appointment and say they are overvalued, and you can kind of explain to them, like even if you would have to have somebody that's basically pay cash or pay extra because
Yeah.
they can't get a loan on it.
Yeah, so
Put up a big chunk, but they like the house,
yeah, so you don't want to tell them what's going to happen. You want to explain the risk, right? So you don't want to say this will never sell. What you want to say is the higher we go above comps, the less predictable it becomes. If you put this thing at 181 or 183 a foot, like I told you, put it at 285 or so, then I can predict that it's going to sell in a 20, 30 day period. If you comp it in the average, it will sell on the average days on market. That's just how markets work. This is an efficient enough market. So if I collect them all, go down here to my one line, I can see what the average days on market is. 17 days on market is average. So if you put it around 285-ish, I'll bet you in 2 to 3 weeks, I'll bet we got an offer on it. Something. Might not accept it, but I'll bet we'll get an offer. So, and it's the longer you do it, it's like magic. It's so predictable if you have the data, but people don't always listen to you. So, so I try not to say it won't sell, but I say the higher we go about comps, the less predictable it is. Might sell tomorrow, might sell in 6 months. It can't predict it because the data doesn't tell us. So the risk is someone does give us that price and an appraiser knocks them down. So then they got to come up with that money, or they got to bring cash. So we're just creating problems for ourselves in the future. But that's the risk with going higher. You want to explain the risk to your clients. That's how you can influence them to do what's right, what's the best. Yeah, so that's how. Do what? Yeah. I mean, it's more predictable, right? It's like you're trying to sell, it sets you as motivated, serious seller, right? Looking for reasonable offers. Let's be reasonable, right? Show me on here where your house is better. Show me on here, it's like, I'm looking at the data, right? Data-driven decisions. That's what you want to have. You don't want to say, I feel like ever. Don't ever say, I feel like. You can probably, according to this, we need to sell around 290. We might sell higher, but it's less predictable. I can't tell you what's going to happen. Another thing, a lot of clients, and I know I'm keeping people, so if anyone needs to leave, feel free. But I used to have clients ask, should I get an appraisal before I list the house? I always say, no, it's a waste of money. They're going to look at the exact same data I'm going to look at. So I'll tell you very closely what they're going to say. The other thing is when you have an appraiser, so again, the appraiser's job is to justify a value. So if they don't have a value to justify, they're just going to kind of put you in the middle, right? So I could, based on these comps, I could say it's really between 280 and 290, 275 and 290, right? So that appraiser might just say, 280. But if we got an offer at 290, he would have stretched to justify that, right? So that's where I'm going to tell you, here's the range it should sell in. We want to push it, let's push it. We want to go down, let's go down. I'll tell you the risks associated with each. But then when it gets a contract, then the appraiser comes in and tries to justify that value so they can reach higher than they would have otherwise reached. Does that make sense? They've got something they're actually trying to validate. Yeah, so it's just like, we could have an appraiser come in, but they're going to look at the same data. They could probably tell you the same thing, but you're going to pay them $350, $400, $500, whatever it is. So let me just tell you, let me give you my recommendation. And then we'll let the market dictate the price. Because I'll tell you where it should go, and the market will dictate what it's worth. Because it's only worth what someone's willing to pay. All right, anything else? Thank you, Doug, good question. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's it. I'm going to stop my recording now. Thank you, guys.
I never thought about the appraiser really easy. Like his job is to really represent the bank. He's just kind of
Yeah,
the bank versus
appraiser didn't care about you.
people ask all the time. I just
Care about the bank.
appraiser, and I never really thought that way to really